so much. Thanks for being here. Thank you too. Everyone's really here to hear you. I'm just here to ask you some questions. For you all, I'm probably not going to ask the questions you want to know from them. I'm not a finance person. I'm a filmmaker. So if you have a specific question, we will definitely get to a Q&A section. Write that down however you note your question as you think of it, and make sure that you ask it when we get to that spot. Because I'm much more about like who they are and the obstacles they overcame. If you want any specifics, I know we were talking before about one of the frustrating things about like some of these interviews, some of these conversations is that specific details are brushed over or not really gotten to specific numbers and all that. So if you have a specific number, unless something's changed, they're open to talking specific numbers. Yeah. So that's really cool because usually you don't get that kind of transparency. So I know Robert introduced us with our like businessy things, but I want to start with like who are the Bucklews? Like, where were you? So I know there's two of you. I know you also, just to warn you guys, I know there's two of them, I can count. And I don't know if you have ever been in their presence before, but they enjoy talking. So we're gonna try and get to 3 questions today. Is my goal. So tell us a little bit about like set you guys up. Where were you from here? Did you move here? And how did that how did that set you up as entrepreneurs?
Go ahead.
I don't know. Is mine on? Is mine
Go ahead.
on?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not good at microphones.
Perfect.
Okay. I moved to Lakeland when I was 16. My parents came back here so that my dad could finish school at Southeastern. So I was a sophomore in high school and did not like Lakeland. I used to say I dread being a dreadnought. That's just a really weird high school, what do you call that? Mascot. Just so weird. Anyway, it ended up that I loved being a dreadnought. I went away to UCF in Orlando, came back and finished at Southeastern, met him along the way. I had been a fan of his bands. He had been a couple of different bands in my life. We got married on Lake Hollingsworth, and I became a
engaged
teacher.
on Lake Morton.
Yeah, we're in the lake.
In that order.
Very nice.
We're a little different.
That's cool.
And then I went to teach in Mulberry, so I was a middle school teacher for a couple of years, taught reading. And then he, meanwhile, was in a band touring, and I was very jealous of that. And so I took a job that involved travel so that I could get a little taste of that. And I did that job for about 11 years, traveling Monday through Friday every week, all over the country and sometimes outside of the country. And it was terrible, and it was wonderful, and it was all of it, and it kind of led us to where we are today, for me anyway, because I got to stay in hotels and eat at restaurants and kind of get really into that hospitality and design culture, and yeah.
I mean, I think of both of us traveling is where we really developed our taste for design and architecture, and we got to do a lot of that together, because while I was traveling, playing music, I would go for 6 weeks at a time instead of like a Monday through Friday. But on the weekends, we could meet up wherever the band was, and then she could ride with us for 2 days and then fly out to her next city on the next Monday. So we got opportunities to stay in really fun hotels, eat at fantastic restaurants, go to some of our favorite furniture stores, which ultimately led us into starting a little furniture company, because we wanted to furnish our house with pieces that we couldn't afford. So I had to make them. And then we couldn't afford the bathtub, so I had to sell one of them. And then we had a business. Well, I've been here since I was 9. I was not a dreadnought. I went to school on the north side with the rest of the rednecks. I went to Lake Gibson, and I almost finished.
Yes,
Why did you say that?
I hated it. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things in my letter that I wrote him when we were dating about why we couldn't be together. Because
That worked out.
4 pages front and back. Because I didn't feel like he had great ambition. I came from a family that really highly valued education, so the way that he didn't, like traditional education.
My mom did. She was real mad.
Yes.
And she's a registrar at college.
She's a registrar at Oak State.
She's
So
still
she was
mad.
not happy. He does have his GED, so, I mean, technically.
I had to get her. She wouldn't marry me.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
All right, so you sold a piece of furniture. That started your first business.
Mhm.
Yes.
1720.
Well, I mean,
Was
you
that
count
planned?
the band as a business?
Yeah,
Not for
yeah,
tonight.
not for tonight.
I never liked jobs.
See, there you go. So you started your own so that you are always working,
Right.
which makes
Which
more
is a little
sense.
It's much easier, much easier than having a job.
Okay, so that you started 1720 bootstrapping. Can you,
Yeah.
What does that mean to you, bootstrapping a business?
Well, we had gotten into Dave Ramsey, so our lifestyle had really changed to where we can only do the things that fit within our means, and we're not doing things on credit and that kind of thing. So we had to sell the tub, or sell the piece of furniture in order to buy the tub, in order to do the master bathroom model.
It took us a long time to get out of debt. We decided, we hit a season where I had to cut out base salaries in the band for a while, and we didn't know how to change our lifestyle. And then we woke up 3 months later with a credit card bill that was very scary. And so,
And student loans.
yeah,
and
so we just took
housing.
a financial picture and had a wake-up call.
And it was.
Yeah, it took us
shocking.
about 4 years to crawl out of debt, and we decided we're never doing that again.
Right. So, yeah, so we just basically made the pieces in our garage, listed them on Etsy, and then, sold them, and then we make the next one that got ordered. So for me, I think bootstrapping is you're doing it before you have like all the equipment and the space that you should have,
And
and all
before
the
you know what you're
business
doing.
cards, and the website design, and the video, and music, and you just do it.
Yeah, you make a little profit, you buy the next piece of equipment, you
Right.
sell another piece, and you grow this way, and you experiment this way and that way, but you stay out of debt, and
Yeah.
you put sweat equity into the business, and it's a slower growth, but it's less risky. But you really have to have your life set up for that. You can't bootstrap a business if you're already swamped with financial burden in your personal life.
Right.
So I think a big part of being able to bootstrap a business is either having, a spouse who can support it with an income, or being able to live below your means and have the time to really put the sweat equity into the business.
And I also think creative, like problem solving, is important. For example, he was making all the furniture out of our garage, and so of course in the summer in Florida, that is not a great system because every day you bring out all the equipment into the driveway, and then the clouds roll in, and you need to put all the equipment back in the garage and finish in the garage, and it was tight. So we're looking for a space.
And she couldn't park in the garage anymore.
Yeah, that was a
not
bummer.
good.
So we were looking for a place to rent, and we just had to be creative because most of the places obviously want a long-term lease signed. There's just the jump of paying that new lease payment that's kind of terrifying, and you're signing up for something that you're like, I don't know if this is going to work or not, and what do I do? And so just being creative and networking is huge. Like, we started to think, who do we know that would maybe have a place, because we don't need anything fancy, we just need a large enough, like a warehouse space. And so we thought about a guy that Jon had known for years in the music industry that had a warehouse space that he would rent out to bands to practice in. And it just turned out that he happened to have a place that we're still in to this day. And the rate that we were paying for that is like, anyone that
It's
hears,
very low.
they're
Don't
just in
say it.
shock.
I'll get murdered on my way out of here.
It's true. But we did like a design show in New York, and so in Brooklyn there's tons of like co-op spaces that are super cool, and they have state-of-the-art equipment. But each of those people, what they're paying even to share their space,
It's
when
like
they
5
heard what we were
times as
paying,
much.
they were just in shock. And yeah, so that, to me, that's bootstrapping.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
That was impressive. That's an impressive nutshell. Okay, so when did that start? When did you sell your first piece or officially become?
2012.
Okay.
And the first one broke in half on the freight truck.
Yeah, sure did.
Learning curve. That's part of bootstrapping.
Yes,
too.
it is.
I feel like that's part of all, like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the life.
Of life learning, yeah.
Figuring it out. Okay, so building that business, it's beautiful furniture. the next
Thank you.
step somehow like is a food hall
Yeah.
and
Project, right?
and a brewery and
A
a
little
bar.
unusual.
So how did the Joinery, which I don't know if I'm late to this observation, but the name is one letter off the Joinery, which is
Well, that's true.
interesting.
Well, I think the
I like
You-
Joinery.
It could mean all sorts of things.
Yeah.
No, you answer the question, but before you do, I'm just gonna say one thing, which is that the name is, so woodworking, you have different types of joinery like dovetail and box joinery and there's other ones.
We're all nodding our heads.
Anyway,
Joinery.
you know. And so we had a team that was helping us come up with our branding and our name, and they suggested the Joinery, and we both thought that was awesome because it tied in our furniture making history, but also the number of people that it has taken to be able to accomplish this is so huge that it really just, to me, captures the joining of all of the people, whether it's the vendors, their employees, to me, Catapult and the LEDC,
Or
the
what
city.
it's taken just to get it done on our
Right,
end. It's
right.
not just Sarah and I. I mean, it's a joining of everyone from the city to property owners to
Yeah,
investor
it's
partners. Yeah, so ultimately this is very big.
So that's the name, but you tell the story.
Yeah,
of
so where
how.
was it birthed? Where did this spark?
Okay, so I would say the birth of this came as I was winding down touring in 2012 and the furniture company was picking up. Sarah and I thought, well, there's not much of a market for our aesthetic here in Central Florida. And 95 to 99% of everything I sold got in a freight truck and left the state.
It didn't break after the.
Right. Yeah, the rest of it didn't break. So I think that we started to think, where should we put this where it might be more successful? You know, and then we would just go through the Rolodex of traveling history together, and like, do we go to Austin, or what about Kansas City, or, you know, what about Asheville, or Greensboro, or Portland, or Northern California, Seattle, wherever. We just so many places that we love, where the city has a lot more culture that we thought we would fit with our furniture company. And I think the more that we considered leaving Lakeland, I think ultimately we just came to the same resolve every time this conversation came up, was that we just really love our community and we love Lakeland and we loved coming home when we were done traveling. So there wasn't somewhere that we wanted to go put roots down. So we started to look at Lakeland, I think, through a different lens. We started to see this as fertile ground to be a part of cultivating what we missed about the areas that we love traveling to. So we're not restaurateurs, but we kind of became foodies just from traveling and eating at so many great restaurants. We're not architects or builders, but we became design enthusiasts through making furniture and staying in great hotels and visiting cool places. So we decided to kind of marry those loves and design, build, and cultivate something in our town that we thought was missing, and something that we really loved about other areas like Denver or Los Angeles or New York or Philadelphia. So that's kind of how it came
Yeah,
out.
I mean, so more concretely, we saw the thing about the Bonnet, is it Bonnet Springs or Bonnie Springs? I always
Bonnet,
know.
yeah.
And we went to the CRA and said, hey, we're thinking of maybe trying to have a showroom / makerspace, maybe even live work, we'll see. And could we do, is there any kind of grant program or assistance to help us kind of launch that in like the Kathleen area? Because then we'd be kind of near to that park and the development that's going to be happening.
And
in the
for
park.
those who don't know, the CRA is our Community Redevelopment Agency here in
Or authority or
Authority.
something with
Or
the
agency,
name.
one of the two.
Association, I'm not sure. Anyway, we're
Agent
looking at
authority.
Bill, like, what'd you say? Anyway, yeah, so we talked to them about how could we maybe do this, and they have certain districts in the city that they focus the funds on to redevelop, and so they had really asked us to kind of think about that Midtown area, which is where House 820 is, and some other cool stuff going on right there. So we were looking at a space, kind of thinking we'd be some of the makers, there'd be other makers, and then, okay, so we're gonna come out to a place and look at the goods that people have made, maybe
Yeah, and then we would incorporate food
food,
and
because
retail.
you know, you're shopping, you're eating, it's kind of an enjoyable space. And so that was kind of how it went from being a furniture showroom / makerspace into being sort of with food, and now there's no furniture makerspace, it's just food.
Well, we're making all the furniture.
But yeah,
So
the
it's kind of a
location,
showroom.
the location, a working showroom, but so the location changed.
It's better
Tell me
be.
you have a furniture salesman at the door every time we
Would
walk
you
in.
like this table?
You're hired.
Oh, no, not me, not me.
No. But
Well, and then the final location also shaped the vision a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
you know, when we went to the CRA with our ideas.
When was that? When you went, the first time you went to the CRA?
I think it was 2017.
Um,
Cause yeah,
Maybe
2016.
16
It's
or
before we
17,
sold our
Right, 2
house.
years, 2 or 3.
Yeah, maybe the spring.
Right.
It was early 2017.
I mean, and part of what we were doing here was we wanted to bring them some raw materials and be a little bit moldable. And you know, where do you see this fitting? What is the city doing? Where are you guys redeveloping? Where would you like to see a concept like this? How could we work with you? You know, here's what we have. Here's our raw materials. How could we do this?
Mm-hmm.
And we worked with them on 5 or 6 different locations, I think, and ultimately we settled on where we are right now. And it's a very different shape than we started out
Right.
pursuing,
You know,
but
the
it's
building kind of defines that. So the fact that it had brewing equipment already in place and a commercial kitchen. The size obviously was a little smaller than the previous location we had been looking at. So that's another element of bootstrapping, which is that you take it as like what comes
Yeah.
at you and how do you work with this, and don't
Yeah.
be so stubborn in your mind about it has to look like this.
yeah, don't be so rigid. Be flexible, be moldable,
And creative.
yeah, and
And actually, I think it,
fit the hole that the puzzle piece needs to fit in.
yeah, and I think it affords you more opportunity, and I don't know, it grows your creativity. I love all of that. I love the fact that it wasn't just an easy, like, here's our building, here's our vision, done. It was like a struggle of
Says the
finding-
one who wants to have everything
That's
planned out
true.
and all the details
I
figured out before you even
okay,
write the
listen
first check.
here.
I have
no
some
problem.
questions about that coming up. We're
We'll
good.
get to-
So you're still, this is still in partnership with the CRA?
Yes.
Yes, we've been given a grant, a very large grant
Okay.
to help get this thing off the ground.
How did you know that was the place you needed to go to get this started? Or was there even a step before going to the CRA?
I knew of the CRA from a few years prior when they were starting to develop what is now House 820.
Yeah.
I think the manager at that point visited me at my shop and found out about me somehow and asked if I was interested in.
Probably by Steve.
Probably. Asked if I was interested in considering helping to develop this location, and it was still the Salvation Army at that point.
Yeah.
So I said, "What's the CRA, and why do I want to move my furniture shop into the Salvation Army?"
It was, yeah.
And,
It was,
so that's how I knew of them. And then when we decided to do something here, House 820 had already come to fruition, and I thought, you know, these are the people who are helping to cultivate young businesses and revitalize areas, and they have a vision for our community. Let's yoke up with them and see where they would put this. And so I think it was networking, it was being attentive to what's going on in the community, where is development happening, finding the resources, like what's out there for you in your own community.
yeah.
You're probably unaware of most of it. You just have to start reaching out.
Digging and talking and networking and meeting and yeah.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the expanding scope of the entire, or just what the project is to begin with, what the joinery is, what it started out as. So it's shifted a lot. What does that look like from like budget? What did you have in mind for what this is going to cost us to start when you first were like, hey CRA, we want to do something cool, and then what did it ultimately get to? And then I have a couple of steps within there, but like what?
Yeah.
And
He'll
you've
correct
already
me.
said you're cool with talking
Yeah,
about
no, we're
it. Okay,
totally
okay.
Oh, no, I'm just
So
thinking
let me-
about how
let me-
big the number is
I
now.
know,
and
it's okay. Okay.
Wow, does that dynamic happen a lot?
And
Where
I
he's
haven't
like,
even
"Ooh,
had a
let's-"
beer, so
Here's
he's
the
had
thing, she's so stressed about the budget and the money, but she does not consider tapering down the vision
No,
a
I do
little
not.
bit.
That's right.
That
We need a low budget with no compromises.
We will make it
That's
work.
right.
Make it work.
Okay, so a little bit back up, we are friends with Wesley Beck, who I don't know exactly how I would communicate his role in the LEDC.
I think he's in
Capital,
the
but he's-
LEDC on the board.
He's huge and very integral. And he kind of knew that we were thinking about, we were getting more and more attention regionally for 1720 from interior designers and architects. And not having a showroom, only having our workshop on Cumbie was challenging because it's really dusty and dirty, and you can't have a designer come in and pieces are in process. There's not a lot of completed things because they go out right away. And so we started to think, okay, how could we do the showroom, the workspace, and maybe a live space? And the Jericho building across from Port Porker, which was the old hardware store, was being put up for sale, and he knew the broker, and Wesley, he introduced us and had us kind of look at it, and that was our first kind of taste of like, oh, we could do something a little different with 1720 than what we thought. We thought we'd just be like a kind of a ghost, or I don't know, a business in the night, and we're hidden, we're just online and everything just goes out. Maybe we could have a more local presence. And so in working through that process, because of our Dave Ramsey principles and not wanting to go into debt, we had decided, like, okay, the price that he's asking, in order for us to be able to afford that and still feel like we're making a wise decision, we need to sell our house. And so that was, to me, I thought it would have been much scarier and harder of a decision than it turned out to be, because we had spent 10 years remodeling it, and it had been a house that we bought for the purpose of having children. This is a really winding road, sorry. And we found out we couldn't have children, and it's a very large house. It's way too much to clean. So I actually was okay to sell it, and it felt like, okay, yeah, sell it. What? It's just a house. And so then that kind of put us in that position of now we have a little nest egg that we could use to invest in a commercial property that could potentially be our retirement down the road, but it would also be our live, work, showroom space. That's kind of how that happened. What was the question?
I don't think that answered it. That was a great story.
Where did, in your mind, when you thought it would cost to do this thing,
Right.
where did the I forgot.
That's right. So then,
Okay, well here's the difficulty. Okay, so the property that we are developing, we don't actually own.
Right.
It was purchased by some guys in town who are part of the development and part of the LEDC and part of Catapult, and they offered us a lease on it so that we could develop it. And at first we said no, we didn't want to lease it. We wanted to own something. And then one of the guys, Wesley, had become kind of a mentor for me a little bit. Just kind of challenged me to think about, find a real estate investment somewhere else, look at the opportunity that's here, and don't pass up the bones of what you could work with. And so, we stretched our minds a little bit and reconsidered, and we brainstormed, how could we do this here? How could we make it work? And the CRA had been on board. They were pointing us towards this building. I was getting a lot of people just saying, this is where this should be. And now I look back and I 100% agree with all of that. So being willing to be counselable, I guess, and moldable, I think is also key. So here's the trick. To sign a lease, well, okay, so to know what this is going to cost to do, you got to hire an architect.
Right.
An architect's going to cost you at a minimum 40, 50, 60
well,
grand.
the way he explained his pricing, it was usually 10% of the cost of the.
And we don't know what the
and
cost of the project
we had no idea
is.
what we were looking
So,
at.
okay, so are you going to hire an
architect?
architect and spend 50 grand on a building that you don't have an executed lease on?
Because you don't own and you don't
No,
pay.
so you got to sign your lease.
Right.
So you know you have the building locked up. You have to take a step forward before you know any of the details. I met with three or
just
four.
Wait, just 2 seconds on that one. Sign a lease.
Sign a lease.
That means I have to pay.
And we have a long-term, we have like 25 years on this place.
Yeah, and we didn't
That's a
know.
long-term
30, I
lease.
think now. And we didn't know at the time, like, what it was going to take.
So think of how that has to fall into place.
Yeah.
In order for you to truly know how much it's going to cost, you have to pay an architect to give you renderings that are going to be biddable to a construction company.
Right.
Those renderings then have to go through all the approvals of all the cities and plan review and all this stuff for approval. You got rounds and rounds of that.
Right.
By the time that's done, now you have a biddable set of plans that you can put out to market. So before
To
you
contractors.
can, to contractors, right? So before you can do that, you got to do your best to estimate. So we met with a handful of commercial construction companies, and we walked through the space. We talked about the square footage and the vision and what it would take to do this, and we came up with a budget of somewhere between, I want to say it was $750,000 and $900,000 to renovate.
Yeah, and so we had been working with John Kirk with the CRA on the other locations, and so he was very generous with us, which is another thing of the whole networking and community aspect of this that I don't want to not emphasize because it was so critical. But he was able to kind of give us a rough outline of like how it would look and kind of based on what was there. It had a commercial kitchen kind of in the center, and we wanted to build the outline of the vendors around that, like in a U shape. So he gave us kind of a sketch. We had the construction guys come out, a couple of them, both of them were our friends. One is a smaller company, one is Rada, it's a very large company. And so we felt like we had, oh, maybe one more, yeah. So we felt like we had a good range, given the best we could come up with that's a kind of a guess on what we're gonna think.
And I'm the eternal optimist, so I said 750, we could probably do this for less than that.
So what happened?
So what happened is we signed our lease in September. We pulled the trigger on the architect. Oh wait, I'm missing one piece of the puzzle. We were really counting on a grant too. And to really get that grant, they need to know hard numbers.
Yeah.
How can you know hard numbers until you go through all this process? So we've got to leap forward without really knowing what kind of support we're going to get, what kind of budget we'll be facing. We just have to take a little bit of a leap of faith here and say we believe in this. We have enough people behind us that say, we think this is going to be a success. We believe in it too. You go do it. So
And be okay with losing it all.
yeah, and ultimately that's the truth, right? Like don't risk it unless you're going to be okay if it fails.
Losing it all, yeah.
Was there like, just pause there for a second, was there like a conversation that you two had or experience with one of the people you were meeting with or something that like solidified it for you, like now let's jump? Or was it just stepping into the dark the entire time?
I mean, I was ready to jump from day one.
Yeah, he was never afraid. It was him probably.
What's the worst that could happen? I've delivered pizzas for years and it's kind of fun. I mean, we lose it all. I deliver pizzas, we pay our rent, we have a little dog, maybe two.
And Sarah, to you? What about for you, Sarah?
Maybe not. We have 150,000.
For the rest of us who live in
Yeah, no.
not eternal optimism.
Utter destruction.
Yeah, I thought we would die. Honestly, every time there was a hurdle, which I'm sure we're going to get into each of the hurdles, but every time I was like, it's over now, right? Like, really, it's the end. Like, this is not going to happen, right? We're out.
Every hurdle, she's like, whew, that was a close one. I'm like, no, we'll solve it.
We just, I don't know. You helped me. You helped me have courage because I'm a very fearful person, and so even though sometimes him encouraging me, I might be mad at him later because it's like it's his fault that all this has happened. I think I just felt like, again, like what's okay. We had sold our house. We live in a very small apartment. It's not that bad, and I can always go back to my company. I left on very good terms, and that wasn't that bad. And so, yeah, what is the worst that could happen? As the story has unfolded, there is an element to me that now I have a worst that could happen, and that does concern me because it concerns other people. But now I think I'm at peace with if it does all fail, it's okay. It doesn't define who I am, and it doesn't define the rest of our lives. And this was an amazing adventure, you know.
And not even stressful at all.
But I'll get back to like that. That's like a continual kind of thing for you, or yeah, okay.
Define continual.
Well, for just like
Perpetual.
Like throughout the day.
All day,
like every day.
Yep.
Like yeah.
Pretty much.
Like I've experienced that with most of my projects I work on.
Yeah.
Like every day I'm like, yes, this is gonna be awesome. This is gonna be the worst thing that's ever.
But listen, if we were both like me, one of us would be unnecessary. And I need that. I do. I need to be reined in a little bit. And she needs to be, pushed off the diving board a little bit. I mean, so
it's healthy.
yeah.
I completely agree. All right, so back to 750. You thought you could do it for less, but you were also had this grant thing hanging in the balance.
Yeah. So we jumped in, and this was mid-September that we signed our lease.
Yeah, July and August is when we had the meeting. September is when we signed the lease.
So while we were getting our architectural renderings finished and getting ready to put that to the city, we decided to move forward and start replacing the roof. Because we could do that without the main permit, because it was just a roof replacement, and at least we wouldn't be losing time. So we're already, before we even have the plans, we're going 6 figures into this thing. And it took until, I think, March before we actually got plans that the city had approved that were good to go out to bid to construction.
Yeah.
And lucky for us, the construction bids all came in.
The very first one, it was just amazing, and I had a meeting right afterwards. So, like, we go in completely naive, having no
Okay,
concept.
so, but out of the 750 to like 900, I think we were thinking 500. No. We were thinking that 500 to like 700 of it was the construction. The rest of it was like the startup of the business, like everything else that it's going to take to do it.
Yeah.
So we were thinking we were all in at like 750-ish
That's
to
right.
900. Me thinking 750.
So we have our first meeting with
And the
Rada.
construction alone was like
And
1.2
he's
million.
really, no, you totally ruined it.
I'll let her tell it. Let's rewind.
It's too late. Anyways, he's a very even keeled, not real emotional, not like dramatic. He's just going through the document, kind of presenting to us the bit, like all the numbers, and this is from the electrical, and this is from the drywall guy, and the framer, and then we get to the last page, and I think we both were just like, woo, wow,
And Sarah's like, okay, we're done now. It's fun.
And I looked at
I hope you like your roof. We're out of
Jackie,
here.
and I was like, yeah, it's over. Like, we're not doing it. How are we going to do that? We don't have enough
And that, I mean,
time.
what that does, that put our whole budget at like 1.4, 1.5, something like that, and we were just like,
Yeah,
okay, that's
done.
ridiculous. We're not rich. Like, this is done.
We sold our house, but I mean, it wasn't like that.
We had like, I think we had like $180,000
Yes,
to
from
do something
selling
like
the house.
that.
Mhm.
So we didn't have a ton.
So
of
that's
money.
it. It's not happening. Good night, everybody.
Joinery's over. Sorry, everybody.
So, actually, what did happen next?
I think you cried.
I probably did. We had one other construction guy come back, and so that way we had another, again, a different opinion, another range. I think we ended up going to 3 more contractors to figure out, like, okay, are we just like, what are we missing here?
Yeah, ultimately, it just really took diving into the details of where the numbers are coming from and what can we do.
And what he means is, like, are there elements of the design or that we could change? For example, so we have essentially seven different small restaurants. Do they each need to have a water heater?
No, and that cut a lot of money out.
Right.
7,000 or 8,000. I was like, we're almost there. Let's do it.
But that's like a tangible example of, like, okay, cut that out. Lighting, we learned a whole lot about how lighting works in contracting.
And if you're only open like during the day, you don't have to have lights.
No. But
Sun comes up
you
and then
have,
the sun
you
goes
have your electrical contractors, and they have all these suppliers, and so they put the plans to the suppliers go to all of the manufacturers, they kind of collect the bids, and they give it back to the electrical, and they add a little bit of a percentage for their part. So just for lighting, we were talking over 60 grand, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, how many lights are we buying? I don't understand
So
it.
so here's the deal. What we did is we bootstrapped our construction budget. We found a contractor who would let us dive into the numbers and literally just go, who's the lighting supplier? What is a relay panel? Why does it need 12 circuits? What is
Googling
this?
little
And-
model numbers of like every little piece, and then realizing, okay, this is not a good use of time. So okay, this part we'll trust. We have to trust them on some of this. But okay, on all the lights, let's see if we can do this ourselves.
But that's probably a little too granular. I think what happened was we had a
But it's
meeting.
good details.
We did, but we had a meeting with a couple people and said, what do we do? Do we try and unwind this somehow? Because this was just, way overblown. And so we decided to sit down and really crunch some numbers. What would the revenues look like for this business? What would what could we do to the budget? What do we actually have in grant money? What do we actually have? What's the shortfall? What are the sources to find funds, and what does that look like, given our principles and our desire to be debt free? And how does this work?
And certain limitations, like you can't get a traditional loan on a building you don't own.
Right.
And a business
So there were a lot of
that doesn't
challenges.
exist. So it's a little,
So before we get, there's a few more challenges, just a few that you overcome. I want to take a minute and just talk about how you personally, what your conversations look like, and what the passion is behind those. This is the obstacle we're facing now. We gonna overcome it, or is this gonna be it? Like what is the passion that keeps you going? Was there? I know you already mentioned that, like, there was already one time where you were like, that's it. That's
Oh,
how often
No,
did
there
it
was a
happen
lot.
that it's it. Right, and so what does that actual process look like, or conversations, or what do you have to remind yourself of to keep going?
Yeah.
Well, Sarah and I are believers, and so a lot of that we would fall back on our faith
Yeah.
together as a couple. We would just feel that that we're not in control and that our needs will be met, and so we trust that we'll see this through, and that there will be success, whether it means the joinery or not, and that we will be okay. And so I think that.
Yeah, mostly just that your identity is not in what you do.
Right.
It's a part of.
In who you're made to be.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a big unifying strength for the two of us in this.
But mostly it looks like me saying, how do we get out, and him saying,
how do we figure it out?
And he's just, again, he's very confident, like, no, we can sort this out, let's see. And he has a brain that does the math part of that just naturally, and I don't have a math head at all. And so very simple things are very challenging for him to explain to me. So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of me being terrified, having very cold fingers, and kind of shaking, and him trying to show the big picture and the beauty of what, if we can overcome these, what it will look like on the other side. And I am drawn to that beauty and to that vision and that dream, and so it's enough, so far it's been enough to like keep me going.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads into, I want to talk about relationships a little bit between you two, for one. We've heard a lot about that, but also just in the community in Lakeland. I got the way what I know about your story is that this would not have been at least what it is now if you had decided to move to another city and start something like this.
That's right.
That like it was
It
a big part of it is the relationships that you've been building over the years as a community and the people that you trust. So how did you how did you decide to go talk to CRA initially? But talk a little bit about the relationships that it took for you to keep going when you faced obstacles you didn't know how to overcome, or you didn't even know what questions to ask.
It took every relationship that we each have.
It really did. I mean, more his than mine in terms of like the nuts and bolts. He has a lot of friends that are investors, business owners, community facilitators. So he just really could draw on those relationships.
One of my
It's
closest
emotional.
friends is a property manager and for a large company, and
So his experience with
he's
retail,
very
leasing,
creative in
and how that
retail and
works.
leasing, and he was just a huge support.
Mhm.
Our friends, our community, people that Sarah could go to when the well was dry with me, and I didn't have the patience or grace for her. And
It's not emotional for him. Like it's very just puzzle
And
solve,
it is
puzzle solve,
emotional for her.
It's highly emotional for me. So so he runs out of, I don't know how to say that, but
Emotion.
I need to have other sources of people that can listen and comfort and encourage and all that. But I mean, just even people like from, I hate to say it like from the past, but like the guy that was at, what's that lighting supply place, Azteca or something like that?
Pretty sure that's it.
No, it's not it. But there's a lighting place there on Lake Parker, and
Well,
he was high
when
school
you've
with
been
the
in a
guy.
community for a long time and you start poking around in an industry that you're not in, you'll find people who you knew from being a kid, or you knew their older brother, and
Yeah.
so
Or the same road, or,
yeah. Anyway, we're getting a bit of a warning here.
Yeah. All right. So this will be my last question. Be ready for your. No, don't apologize.
But should we talk a little bit about different types of sorts? I mean, you're the
Yeah.
Wait.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
Do it.
Different
That,
types of
that
sorts.
question you have in your head. Say the question
Okay.
and then answer it, and then
So-
we'll go to questions out here.
Okay, because I think funding is the main topic for tonight, and it's taken us a while to get here.
There's a lot of backstory.
So, in our brainstorming and trying to figure this out, you have a lot of ways to close financial gaps. You can go get a loan.
Mhm.
If you're leasing a property, you can ask the property managers to give you a tenant improvement loan and to work it into the lease. You could get a line of credit. You could take on an equity partner and sell a portion of the business. You could leverage something else you have personally, another business. And there's just so many ways to go about doing it, and they all have their pros and their cons. You can look into additional grant funds. You can look into anything that your community might do to help support you through the changes in the project. And I think, we ultimately landed on a little bit of each and sort of spread the different types of risk. We're very risk averse, generally speaking, so we don't like debt where we just have a fixed payment and a liability. So if you take on more debt and you keep more of your equity, you're more bullish on your position in the company, and you're thinking, okay, I'd rather keep more control and more equity in the company, and I'd rather take on the risk of not being able to pay that loan. Whereas if you take on an equity partner, you think, okay, I'm giving up more of this asset that I've grown to this point, but I don't have the risk of the loan payment and that debt obligation and that weight and that burden. And I think sometimes it's easy to discount what an equity partner can bring to the table, even in intangibles, even when it gets hard, and they're like,
what about this?
What about this? And they say, we're in this too, and we believe in it. And just having someone else to yoke up with and do this with them brings a lot of value to the project, to the ups and downs and the emotional drains.
And just the experience, so we do have an equity partner. We own 60% of the joinery, and they own 40%. We did get the $250,000 CRA grant. We have a $250,000 tenant improvement loan on the property that is being paid off in 10 years, but
with the first term of the lease, yeah.
So we're hoping to pay it off as fast as possible.
And then we have a $100,000 traditional bank loan.
That our investor was able to procure. But yeah, there.
So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and then of course we beat up all of our budgets as much as we could and did the lighting, if I can think of that.
And then even as recently as 2.5 months ago, we changed the scope of our business plan in general because we decided to take on the bar and the brewery.
I wouldn't say decide.
Well,
I would say you had to.
It's still decided.
It's a great opportunity, but it wasn't one that we were in a position to afford to take.
Right.
And but at this point, we were so far in, we had to take it, and we had to figure out a way to take that opportunity. And so we had to raise some additional funds, and so we didn't
to
start
cover the cost of starting a bar and brewery,
right. And then,
which is an entirely other business.
Yeah, and that happened because we've been negotiating with a couple of breweries for each for a long time, and ultimately came to the same conclusion about why it's too challenging for another brewery to step into this position. And we were encouraged by both of them and by other people in the brewing community that we should do this ourselves and that they would support us. And they are, and they're great resources and sources of encouragement for us. But yeah, I mean.
But I really did think it was definitely over when that happened.
So
we aren't going to be doing it.
And that was just 2 months ago.
That was in August, I think July, maybe
July,
or
August.
It was
That was the most recent. This is never happening.
definitely over.
So right now, we're all in probably between 1.4 and 1.5 million. And we had taken that 1.4 and beat it up to like 1.2-ish and had our original structure. And then we took on the added brewery and bar, which added expense to our build out and startup.
So
that
again, the
meant
business
finding
model,
more money.
Yeah.
And our contractor filed for bankruptcy.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
Is that the contractor that let you dive into the numbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we may have bankrupted.
Sorry. No, but wait, what did you just say right before that?
You needed more money when 2 months ago.
Well, that's right. I was going to say our business model originally was that we were basically property developers, and we were leasing out each of the vendor spaces to different standalone restaurant companies, and then we were going to lease out the brewery, and the brewery would run the bar, and all that we're doing is designing it and then property managing. But taking on the brewery and the bar means that now we are one of the vendors in the food hall. So, and of course, it's a whole other business that we don't have experience or even, I don't want to say passion because I do like to drink, but it's more like I don't have like this passion.
Especially the last
brewer.
years. I think that's been on an incline.
But I just mean like I don't have a passion for brewing. I wasn't like a cocktail person that works at home making cocktails because I'm just passionate about them.
But she's having the most fun designing the cocktail menu, building out the bar.
I don't know, it's a little scary.
It's fun.
I do like picking out the coasters, that part's fun.
So you felt like you had everything, just before we get to these questions, like, you felt like you had everything, and then extra money was needed.
That's right.
How,
She was like,
You
okay,
go
it's
back
over
to-
again,
yeah,
and I was
right.
like, we've done this 6 times, it's still not
So
over.
initially we thought about and talked about with our partners having another investor, and so to do that we had to kind of consider 2 different possibilities. One was that the bar and brewery would be a different LLC or a different entity that would lease from the LLC that owns the Joinery, and that presents some complications just internally. It costs more really to do it that way.
Yeah, operationally it would be more expensive. So then we thought about bringing in a third partner, or, biting the bullet and taking a bank loan.
Which was, that was a real,
Doing
yeah.
that as a portion of,
Now I am really.
and giving a little more equity into our partner and doing a bank loan.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have a little bit of everything. It's a little uncomfortable for us because we're so risk averse and we don't like debt. But ultimately, what we signed up to do here is much bigger than anything we could have done on our own. And so it really is a community effort. It's an effort of the Lakeland community,
Mhm.
the people who want to see this happen, who are supportive.
Yeah, the owners of the property, that they're the ones building the office building right next door, and how much they've believed in us and given us, they had a lot of
Because no one in their
tensions.
right mind would have leased us a building at this
No,
much
I
price.
really
We were
don't
not
think so.
able to pay this on our own. So
And
they
they had a lot of
believed in us enough
pitches,
to
yeah.
lease it to us.
So, yeah, that
Give
was
us a shot at it.
huge. Obviously, the CRA and what they did, our partners, their belief in us has been incredible. Yeah, it really does take the whole community to do this.
Yeah.
and I would think, just to, back to that loan that you guys didn't want to take, but it's not like I feel like you had the extra voices. It's not just you two, you have a partner
That's
Right.
who has
Right.
experience, who also is saying, like it's not just money that they're bringing in, they're bringing experience,
Right.
and like, it's gonna be okay, a little bit of debt's not gonna,
Yeah.
it's not the end of the world, like, it can help you, well, all that.
Yeah,
So,
and they, I think, they do everything, like they're there for the event, we had First Friday, we had the trunk or treat event, they're there, just giving advice, giving their opinion about how we should market. Our partner was there
And they've
yesterday
been great.
sleeping.
So when
Yeah,
we
they do
originally were
everything.
looking for a partner, I wanted to go to 3 people and get their feedback on the business plan that we put together. And one of the 3, and I wanted to go to 3 people from different
Very different
perspectives.
directions,
Right.
yeah.
And so one of the guys I went to, ultimately, is he became our partner. And I did not ask him to invest, I asked him for feedback, and he was, honestly, he was pretty direct in
Harsh.
not harsh.
Harsh,
He
he's
was
a
just
nice
direct
person,
in,
but, what's
Direct,
the
harsh,
word?
yeah.
you're not harsh.
No, he's not harsh,
He's
but
gonna watch this.
what I mean is, I don't mean harsh, I mean critical, but like constructively critical.
Yes,
Right.
but that's what I
How-
asked him
that's what
for,
I mean.
like, tell me what is wrong with this, help me fix this, help me make it better.
Yeah.
And then, and also to those people, who do you think I should go to for something like this? And so just like taking those 3 people I knew and trying to expand that to like 30
Right.
to go to. And so I had a meeting with one of the first guys I was gonna actually pitch to, and a couple hours before that meeting, he just swung by the project and said, hey, how'd your meeting go? I said, oh, it's in a couple hours. He goes, okay, well, we do it.
We liked
And
it,
so
yeah.
that's kind of how it went down. It was great.
It was amazing. But yeah, you had to, I think for me, I don't know if you had to learn this, but I learned it vicariously. When you're selling a portion of your business, obviously you want to get the highest price for it, but the person who's buying it wants to get the lowest price. They're trying to make a deal. So you're learning, oh, okay, how do I, this sounds so terrible, but I know, how do I make this look appealing to them given what their concerns and their values and expectations are? And so each of the people he talked to are, like, one is super conservative, doesn't do a lot of investing in small businesses like this. Another person that's all he does, and so very, very open to it, and just learning the terminology and what they're looking for and how to frame your plan, and even just the logistics of like make your spreadsheet have these 2, like a low, medium, high return estimate kind of thing for this type of investor. It was, to me, it was very educational.
And I really love the creativity of bringing a partner on and being able to structure the deal in so many unique ways. Short-term, long-term, options to get out, options to buy percentages back. valuation now versus valuation then, and kickbacks and percentage. I mean, there's just like all kinds of ways that you can structure these things to be creative and answer concerns that your investor may have that may not be a concern to you, and it's easier to give in this area and to pull a little back over here. So I just like that kind of dance and negotiation and puzzle to solve. That was fun for me.
Was that fun for you, Sarah?
No. No, but I do really appreciate I love to learn, and I love the insights that we gain by having all of those conversations. But I could never.
5 minutes. I know.
Yeah.
I know. All right. Thank you. Okay. So first question, Jamie. If you have a question, raise your hand.
So I think I understood you to say you had 180,000 or so after the sale of the house, and now you're doing this $1.6 million build. Of course, with all these other contributions as well. In the meantime, for groceries, for rent, for underwear and socks and toilet paper, would you just build furniture still in your spare time? Like, how's that work?
And then you also have two sides to your underwear, so you have to.
Totally.
Okay, so the
Did you guys hear
question,
that? Did you guys hear that?
yeah, the question was basically how do you make ends meet and afford socks and underwear while you're doing this project that's taking 85 to 100 hours a week out of your
Because I'm
time?
pretty sure you're not doing this on your spare time.
Correct.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, this is full time.
Yeah, so the answer part of that is some of what we have saved went towards living expenses. Some of that went towards setting aside a year's worth of living expenses, and we have another company. Some of it, was taking a leap and hiring somebody to help run the other company to fill the void that I was leaving in my absence.
Right. Some of it is magic. We can't tell you.
None of it's magic.
It is magical how
It's
hard
hard.
you work.
It's really
Yeah.
hard. I mean, we live on a teacher salary or less.
Yeah.
So then do you, and I'm getting into it here, so do you feel like then you have like a hard date where you know you're gonna start drawing the salary from the joinery on ideally this time frame?
We will draw I don't think, I'm not gonna draw a salary. She probably will draw a salary for her work that she's put in it. But not until we have money that's coming in.
Profit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that like you have calculated this month down the road, or is it when you open?
Yeah, we're gonna open last May, so we should have salaries rolling last summer.
So a few months after opening is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think we'll have, cash flow within the first couple months of opening for sure. And we'll exhale and take a day off.
But we do live very meagerly right now. Like not.
Yeah,
not,
I mean,
and I
personally,
don't mean
we
that
have
in
no
an
debt, and we have a
ungrateful
cheap
way.
apartment, and,
Yeah.
and we live on less than what we make. And when we're working towards the goal of the joinery, and you're writing big checks towards really neat things that you're buying for the new business, you don't have that drive to go
Go
spend,
shopping or go
and-
Marshalls or whatever.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know, but cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I write checks that are more than I live on in a year.
It's real wild.
It's crazy.
But our
It's a
monthly
weird
budget.
foot in each world here. It's very strange.
I don't know if you think it's bad to say our monthly budget.
I don't care.
So we use the Dave Ramsey app every dollar, and we budget $3,700 a month. And so then you do basically an envelope system, but it's digital and kind of set it aside. So that's not. I'm not ungrateful. I don't want that to sound like.
No, I don't think anyone heard you as ungrateful.
Yeah.
But we try to be careful.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We'll go here and then we'll come over. Yeah.
Do you think it would have been maybe easier to attract an investor or a partner, or to get a line of credit with a bank if you were a sub-S as opposed to an LLC?
Okay, the question is, does the type of business that you structure yourself as weigh at all on the ability to get a loan or bring on a partner, if I'm not mistaken? In my experience, no. In my experience, it really falls back on who is the owner of the business, and are you credit worthy? Because you're going to be guaranteeing the loan. And from my perspective, an investor is more concerned with who you are, who you've been in your personal life and in your finances, and what is the business model, because you can change from an LLC after you file Form 2553 and your taxes an S-Corp to like being an S-Corp, and you can, there's so many ways to change all of that, that I don't see that as the challenge more so than having the right idea, having the right character, having established yourself as reliable.
Did you discover that, what you just said, throughout this couple of year process, or did you have that information before? Because I don't understand anything you just said, so.
Which part?
Just
The escort,
about
the
that,
taking-
yeah.
Oh, I mean,
Form 2553 and all
I'm
of
just saying with
that.
that, were you
I would be a little
educated
silly.
in business and all that, or
No.
just
No, we
learned
never-
I
that?
got audited by the DOR. That was my information. And I passed.
We didn't have anything wrong, but now I've taken it over and I'm terrified that we're gonna have something wrong, because
No,
that's my new job.
Here's the thing, it's so hard to run a business and to do it correctly.
There's
For
a
me
lot
to
of
buy a
tools.
piece of wood, even at Home Depot, and sand it and sell it to you for $3 more, I have to file monthly paperwork, quarterly paperwork.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, annual paperwork, and then for me to pay
Like
her
three different
$10 to help me
agencies.
is even more paperwork.
Yeah.
So, I've always wanted to do it correctly, and it's hard
by the book,
because
we don't wanna
there's no forgiveness for ignorance. The burden's on you to be compliant, and so that has always terrified me. So from the time I was in a band, and we would hire guys to travel with us, and you start thinking about the complications of selling merchandise in different counties all over the state and collecting sales tax and filing that, and like, okay, this guitar tech worked for us in this state, and then in this state, and then in this state. I mean, it's very
Even
complicated.
Canada, going across to Canada and selling
Yeah.
merch, like the stress of that.
So I think some of that, I just enjoy it, and I enjoy learning and trying to understand those things. So I think a lot of it has just come from owning and running businesses for so long that I like understanding how it works and how to do it correctly.
Awesome. Question?
Okay, so now unfortunately your date to open had been delayed, but it looks like you've got a projection for,
When is
For
it?
last September.
Last month?
Right.
Oh, December, yeah. Well, we're saying Lord help us. We're saying a soft open in December
okay.
and grand opening in January after the holidays. But, I mean.
Now it's recorded.
And then,
It's all up to
Saying.
Joey.
She
Like,
left it
if he
open.
doesn't build out the vendor counters, forget it. We're gonna be
Yeah.
delayed.
I didn't see you there
No
today.
pressure. Oh,
and then
no,
who's
no,
gonna be
no.
joining you in that space?
Oh,
The
which
vendors?
vendors?
Yeah.
Okay, great question.
Go ahead.
You go ahead. Okay,
So
number
for
one
Sabu,
is-
Sabu Ramen, who hopefully you tasted,
Woo.
so he'll be there. We have King State Coffee, friends of John's, but they have a space in.
And they just
Sonoma.
got voted number 8 best coffee shop
In the
in
country.
America
Ooh,
by Food and Wine
yeah.
magazine, and we're gonna get them here in Lakeland.
So exciting. Mayday Ice Cream, who, if you've had Hippo Popsicles, that's their most notable brand, but they're starting to build Mayday Ice Cream, so they'll be there.
Yeah.
And then we have Ava, which is the pizza place out of Tampa. And then next to ramen, we have Gallito, which is a taco place in Sparkman Wharf, but the chef is like our favorite chef in Florida. He has a full service place called Rooster in the Till. If you haven't been, it's definitely awesome for like a nice night. Then next to him, we have Otto, which is poke and sushi burritos, poke bowls. And then number 7, lucky number 7, we don't know, but we have we have probably 5.
2.
I know.
See, we have
5 or
7
6
people who wanna-
interests,
yeah.
but we have, I think we're down to 2, like deciding between the last 2. We should have the last concept presented Wednesday.
We're gonna pick that restaurant last weekend.
Yeah. So that's our last space. And then of course we'll have the bar. And then we have a retail space, Bloom Shakalaka, which is amazing, and I'm so excited for that one. Flowers.
Thanks.
A CRA question. Was that a competitive process? Was that an open grant that anybody could apply for this funding, for that area? And
I think it depends on the area and the project. I think some areas have specified grants that you can apply for that are existing, and some areas have funds with no specific grants, and you
Kind of talk to them.
can bring a project to the board.
Yeah,
and
which
you can-
is a public meeting that anybody
Yeah,
can attend.
and anyone can bring a project and make a pitch for funds that are available for redeveloping the areas.
Right.
So which was your case?
Well, our case is a little different because we were looking at so many different areas to do this. I mean, we were everywhere from what they were calling the art district to, I don't know what the one in Kathleen district was, to Midtown to now downtown. Ultimately, it landed in the downtown district, and the funds were much tighter there.
Yeah.
And there weren't specific grants there. So that, yeah, that one we said, here's our project, what do we do? Is this where you want us to do this? And how would you support us? And so that went through our project manager to the CRA board, and then we brought the project to the board to share with them what our vision was, and that's when the grants get approved or disapproved based on the board decision.
The board approval, yeah. That's how we understand our process to work. But there are different ones, yeah.
So we're at, well, the time change messed me up there, 7:15, which I think is when we said we were going to be ending, but we're happy to continue this conversation going. I know we got to a few questions out here. So if any of you have questions, feel free to continue, right? Does anyone tell me no? Yes? Okay, thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
We'll go here and then we'll come back to Steve.
Go ahead.
One of the biggest things about starting a business, you're in the honeymoon phase, and even though it doesn't feel like it, it's hard, it's a lot of work. Tell me what kind of a contingency plan you have for next stage when you've got somebody who's maybe not producing enough. Because I go over to Armature Works in Tampa a lot, and I see a lot of the restaurants cycle in and out. So do you have them on a contract? What kind of a sustainability plan do you guys have?
Great question. So if anyone didn't hear, the question was basically, what is the business plan for your vendors if they rotate in and out? What's the sustainability of your business model if your vendors can't stay successful? Am I effectively, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say that our current business model is fairly diverse because it's a little bit of a real estate play, it's a little bit of a bar, and it's a little bit of development. So we leased a building that was nowhere near as valuable as it is after the improvements that we've made. So not only do we have a standard, margin, but we have a real estate improvement margin, right? So, and when we have so many vendors that can operate out of this space, the effective cost for them to operate a food business here is much lower than it would be as a standalone restaurant. Now, not all restaurants that are starting here are going to last. It would be naive for us to think so. We've offered them flexible lease terms to some degree. Most wanted 3 years with at least one option to renew. So that's where most of the contracts are. We do have one at 2 year. And if they fail, we're going to work with them to have an exit strategy and find a replacement. I think that if a business, one of the restaurants goes out, we will try to find something that will fill the void of that cuisine that doesn't step on the toes of the rest. And we'll continue to sell alcohol to the patrons.
Yeah, but having the bar helps us, and then having the brewery, because we can brew.
Yeah, because we can also
which
brew.
reduces our cost at the bar.
Right.
And although the owners of the property don't want it to become like a beer factory, like a brew hub type of facility, there is the potential for a distribution of small amounts out of there. So we have a couple different methods of trying to keep things hopefully safe so that we don't die. Just kidding.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, just first of all, thanks for coming tonight and sharing what a wonderful testimony. You guys are just, we can sit and listen to y'all for hours. It's awesome. But I want to say this to whoever's in the room thinking about starting their own business or thinking that story is impossible for you. How am I going to meet somebody that's going to give me $300,000? How am I going to talk to City and give me $250,000? How am I going to find a developer that's got a building that wants to give it to me and lease it to me? And I would just tell you that developer 25 years ago called me and he hated Lakeland. He hated this city. He went to college here. He said, I'm never coming back here. He hated the city because he couldn't get sewer out to the building. And today he's building the first garage we built in downtown Lakeland in 30 years. He's building the first spec office building that we've ever had in the city of Lakeland since I've been here in 35 years. He's doing the Catapult project. He's building the new office building. He bought the brewing company. And this was a guy that was ready to leave and hated Lakeland.
Who neither one of us knew 3 years ago.
Right. And 5 years ago, I met you at Pal's Pizza. You might not even remember the night.
Yeah.
And you hated Lakeland. You hated the CRA. You hated the city. You told me you had a shitty attitude about it. You did.
Yeah.
You did. You were like, this place sucks. I am leaving. I'm done with this place. I can't get anything done. You guys make it hard for small business and all that stuff. And so I just want people in here to know, you can't be any lower than he was 5 years ago. You can't be any lower than Wesley was. And yes, it's a testimony to your hard work and you keeping yourself debt-free and all those kind of things, but there was something in there that's the switch turned, and you said, I am gonna do it. I'm gonna stay in Lakeland and make it happen.
Yep.
And you kind of touched on it, but I'd love for you to encourage these people back, not tell your story, but tell your story to them and encourage them that they can do what you did, because it's not impossible.
No, it's not impossible. Sarah and I are not wealthy. Maybe we will be one day, but we are certainly not. And Steve's right, we were ready to bail. Because there's nothing here for us except the community and the people. And so that's what kept us here. And I mean, it was people like Steve who worked to change our perspective. And he saw the value in changing the perspective of one person. And I think Catapult, the work that Catapult is doing, is changing the perspective of a lot of people. So I just think if one spark can produce a project like the Joinery, what can hundreds of sparks do for our community? So with Catapult. Along those lines?
Amen. I just want everybody to walk out encouraged, not just to look at you and say, hey, I could never do that, but that you would say to them, let me know what you need help with. I'm going to help you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go
Do
ahead.
you, through this process, have you learned about this might not be the right question for y'all, so you just tell us where to go. Where are there other spots in Lakeland through the CRA or wherever that you know is needed for Lakeland that we could be inspired to be like, we need to go there, we need to build that, we need to support that?
The north side.
Yeah, very much so. So your question is, are there areas where we should see the CRA begin to move, or where is the CRA moving that you should be aware of?
Kind of both, because
Okay.
you chose downtown because it led you there, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there were other spots that you could have gone to.
They have a map. So the CRA office is on the second floor in City Hall. You're allowed to, anyone can go in anytime. They're very, very nice, and they'll talk to you and just kind of learn who you are and what you want to do. But they have like a map, and they have their regions laid out and kind of spelled out, like Dixieland is one, the downtown, the midtown. I feel like they changed, and there's not any more in Arts District, but there was going to be like on the other side of where we
I
are.
think it's called the East Main District now, or something.
Maybe the
like
East
that.
Main. So like if we weren't married and he had not done what he did and networked and all of that, I probably would have done that. I would have gone to the office and talked to someone and said, like, how does this work and what are the programs? And
Yeah, I would say if you're an entrepreneur and you're considering something along the lines of developing a spot for your business, or developing something residential, or just looking for a place to rent, and maybe some help in a build out to be a part of the community, go and ask them what they're doing. And tell them who you are, what your vision is, and see if there's something they're doing that you can step into the stream of and participate. There's a lot more going on and a lot more available than any of us really know until you step into those streams.
Their website's lakelandcra.gov.
yes.
It has all that information.
Yeah.
LakelandCRA.gov.
LakelandCRA.gov, yeah.
Cool. Any final questions? Yes.
So as far as funding is concerned with investors, what was harder, actually selling your vision or getting the funds, and why?
Getting the funds was fast.
Yeah, once there was a commitment, the funds, came in time.
Like the next day.
Yeah, that was
immediately.
what followed.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think along the lines would be selling the vision. I think, because it's a different, the business model is not typical. It's not a typical real estate development deal. It's not a typical restaurant that you start. It's not You know, it's just it's very atypical.
Mostly because we don't own the property. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and so to step into something where there's not, you know, there's a temporary asset, there's not a long-term asset. So whereas, you know, how do we quantify the value of something intangible that's developed on a property that you don't own? So I think really working through the nuances of the business is the stickiest portion of raising the funds. I think it was less grueling than it would have been at a bank, though.
Right.
And I think, you know, when you're talking to multiple investors or trying to get lots of advice, you know, you'll get so many different answers that it's less discouraging, because somebody might say something negative, but the other one will be really, you know, along the lines of, this is a great aspect of the business. So, you know, I thought that was, selling the vision was educational and kind of fun, I think. Seeing other people who would catch it, and you know, you can see when somebody catches what you're doing, and that just kind of becomes enticing, and that's fun.
Did selling that vision look like for you? Did that look like a conversation? Was it like a business plan document? Was it a pitch deck, a PowerPoint presentation? Like, what did that look like?
So for me, it was just like a 2-page little business document. It was just a rough outline of what we think it's going to cost and what we think it will make, with some branding to give it a little bit of a look and feel, as well as an iPad with some images of other functioning businesses, you know, that are very similar. And it was coffee. It was sitting down and saying, hey, I'd like to talk about this with you because I'm considering raising funds, and I would like some feedback before I really go into a hard meeting. I want to be prepared, yeah.
Yeah, like we actually talked to our landlord, our apartment landlord about, you know, his take, because he's an investor and he's a real estate guy, and what would he say? And so but it was mostly conversations. But you did have like a little spreadsheet with all the numbers. He's very good at Excel.
That seems like that approach just seems like an easier way in for you and for them, who, whether they invest or not. But for you, it's a way to kind of test the idea with someone who could be a potential investor, and also improve on your idea.
Absolutely, that was my goal, was before I get murdered out here, getting turned down, let me at least brush up on what this looks like and just get a little bit of comfortable feedback from people I know.
All right, I have one final question. Anyone else out here? Okay, so what would one or two, whatever, did I miss anybody? Okay. Advice for Jon and Sarah 3-4 years ago, one or two bits of advice you would tell before you started on this whole thing.
Ooh, you go first.
I have no idea. I mean, I would just say, just start. You're never going to be ready enough. Yeah.
That's advice you would give to me.
What advice would you give to each other? That's probably.
I still have to tell her that. I don't know. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You deliver pizzas again.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
that's not so bad.
I don't know. I think I would advise myself to not be so afraid, but I'm not really sure how that would work. But because like you say, even though I get mad and I don't always live like I believe it, I do believe what is the worst that could happen. So I wish I could have grabbed hold of that, because I would have, you know, not lived with so much angst and worry all the time. I think. I don't know.
I mean, I would tell myself to go easy on my optimism, but if I did that, I wouldn't have done it. So I'm not going to advise against doing it. It's hard. It's freaking hard. This is hard. We argue all the time. But, you know, but we're committed to this and to each other, and we argue through and we find resolve and we continue. So, you know, it's not easy. It's worth it.
Yeah, I think I would have thought it would take longer. Like, I wish I had known or considered or been okay with it, because I think we had unrealistic expectations of ourselves that we would complete something in that period of time. But
You
I
mean
don't.
it's taking longer than you would have? than you
Yeah,
would have
the
thought?
process. Like how long it
You knew it
takes
was
to
gonna
get
take long. I
plans.
just
No,
kept telling you
no,
it'd be
no.
fast.
Oh, maybe it's his fault. See, it is his fault. Everything is his fault. No. But like to how long it takes for the architectural plans to get done, how long it realistically takes to go through the city, how long it takes for contractors to get bids back.
Yeah, the next
When
food hall
you-
is gonna be way faster than this one.
When you go into it thinking it's gonna be a quick turnaround, then you're just disappointed. Whereas I think if I had known, oh, it probably will take 6 to 9 months just for that part. And then I'm not like worked up and worried that it's taking so long. Maybe that would be good advice.
Yeah, I mean, I personally feel like if I knew how hard the big thing that I was doing was gonna be before I did it, then I probably wouldn't have started, so
Better
I
not
think
start.
that insane optimism is so important.
Yeah.
That I'm gonna do this thing, we're gonna find a way to do it, whether I know what that answer is or not.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, thank you. I think feel free to ask them any questions. They're the most approachable people in the universe, so ask them whatever afterwards. Eat some more food. Thank you all for being here, and hope you can join us for the next startup grind the next time it happens.